Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for an incredible night. Oh, we're taking it up a notch. I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. Wes and Mike TZ coming all strong.
And welcome to the conference call. We're here for another great episode, and we're going to take a little time to step back a little bit and let you guys in on, the reason why we're really doing this channel, and to give you like our mission statement, and then kind of break down this into like a three-part series. Before we get started, let's introduce our co-host. I am Chris Edwards, also known as Constantly Changing for me here on social media. And next to me, we have...
Is that me? I don't know what your screen looks like.
That is you.
Oh, okay. That me, TJ, also known as Bizarre Hodgepodge on everything, child.
I'm Rex, and I'm also known as Rags and Pieces Mag on most everything otherwise.
Okay. So as you guys know, we've been doing this channel and we've done a couple of episodes here, but we want to just kind of step back a little bit and give you a little bit of insight about who we are and why we chose to use this platform, YouTube, to put out our shows. So basically our mission statement and the purpose for us doing this is to speak to and entertain people of color on topics including, but not limited to, pop culture, gay culture, life experiences, fashion, and style. So when you come to this channel, we want you to be able to get a little bit of that. Every week is going to be a different topic that kind of touches on those specific things. We're going to have some fun, but then we're also going to talk about some really hard-hitting topics as well, things that are meaningful to us. And that brings us to today. Today, we're going to start a three-part series where we kind of introduce ourselves and the reason behind this mission and vision that we had for this channel. I'm going to let these guys question me and give you a little bit of insight about who I am and why we decided to, like I said, do this channel. So feel free to start with whoever.
Okay. What I would, or maybe the audience would like to know about you most is, what do you think is your reason for being public about your life? Because I think we all see people who get on social media and they're sharing snaps, or they do selfies, or they're putting out some sort of content. Everybody has like a reason for joining like this public sphere of like sharing bits of their life. So what do you feel like is your, mission or your objective? Yeah.
I will say this. This was never ever something that I set out to do. And it was probably furthest from anything I ever envisioned for myself. When I started my social media page over on Instagram, Constantly Changing for me, it was really just to kind of catalog a lot of the different looks that I was doing. And I think I kind of fell into the same stereotypes that a lot of people, get on social media just to kind of promote themselves, their brands, this and that. But it, over time, it's really morphed into something different. And it's been a journey. I identify as Black, bisexual man. I am recently married, within the last 3 years. I met my husband 4 years ago. And honestly, I would say it's because of the relationship that I have with him that allowed me to allow others to be a part of my journey. And then, one of the things that we had talked about when we got together was that we weren't going to really be very public about our relationship. And the reason behind that was we wanted to keep something for ourselves. Yes, I was on social media, and a lot of my stuff that I did was on social media. And now my business is on social media, but I wanted to be able to have something for myself. But I would say within the last year or so, I realized that not being authentically myself 100% in everything that I was doing, I couldn't do it unless I was being 100% myself, basically. And, through a lot of the things that I've been doing on here, especially a lot of interviews with different people, I realized that it's really important for people to see authenticity. It's really important for people to see representation. And I belong to a community of people that are marginalized on many different levels. One, a person of color. I come from a Caribbean background, and, for all intents and purposes, most people will want to categorize me as I'm a Black gay man. And you don't see all those things represented on camera a lot, and where people talk about it openly. And, I want to be, not that I want to be a face of that or ever really intended to be, but I think it's important for people to see that, hey, despite the circumstances, and it doesn't matter how old or young you are, you can be yourself. You can be your authentic self and let people see themselves in you, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So I think that is my reason for being a part of this experience with you guys. You know, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different stories to tell. And this is my story. Being African American man from Caribbean descent, being gay, over the age of 40 and just now letting people in, that's a unique experience. And for other people to hear it, they can associate and say, hey, you know, if he can do it, I can do it as well, and I can be happy. Yeah.
Rex, did you have another question before I?
Quite a bit of information, and I think that it's good. Like I never I know you, right? But I never really considered that the way you thought about yourself. Like you very rarely hear people talk to you about how they feel about themselves, like how they see themselves. And I think that it's eye-opening to hear what a person feels like they're putting out versus what you see. And so I enjoyed listening to that. Go ahead, TJ.
Honestly, my first question was going to be what you just answered, which was like, how did you get to this point? Because I know, like I said, or like you said, in the beginning, you were playing things kind of more so close to the chest, or you were more private or less open than you were before or now. And so I guess my next question would be, because you mentioned your background. Obviously, we all have different backgrounds. How do you think your background, I guess, being of the generation you're from, of geographically where you're from, how do you think that affected, I guess, your decision to live your authentic self or come out at this stage of life?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, it didn't have anything to do with geography. It didn't have anything to do with my age. I think it really had to do with the person that I met. I did not want to hide myself. I think that when you find true love with someone, one, you don't want to hide it, and you should never hide it. And in order for me to be with this person and just live a full, happy life, I had to be open. You know, there's no way to hide that. And you should never ever feel as though when you found that person you want to be with, that makes you most happiest in life, that you should feel as though you need to hide who you are, who you guys are together, and to hide the feelings that you have for one another. You know, you don't see heterosexual people walking around saying, oh, they don't hide their relationships unless they're cheating on their spouses or significant others. You know, they're able to be out in public and just live their life normally. And this is what I do. You know, my husband and I go out all the time and, you know, go to events, and this is my husband, Ronald. You know, it's never ever a question. There's never ever a sense of doubt or embarrassment, or I need to shun myself because I don't fit society, quote unquote, norms. This is who I'm with. This is who I love. And this is who holds me down, and we hold each other down. And I'm not going to hide that for anybody. You know, so in all honesty, it was when we first met, I realized from the very beginning that there was something very different about our relationship. And I knew that I cannot live the life that I had been living up until this point. It just so happened to be that I was in my 40s. And I just wanted to just be my normal self and just live openly, you know, and if you didn't agree with it, you know, you can't please everyone all the time. And I'm not here to please everyone. I'm only here to please myself and my partner, you know, and if everyone else comes along for the ride, the more the merrier. If not, step to the back. I'm not here to entertain you. I just embrace where I am in my life now. And it was the individual that allowed me to just be my true authentic self.
Okay.
He said he wasn't here to entertain us.
Are you not entertained?
Entertainment.
Yeah.
I had a follow-up question, but Rex, I mean, I don't want to...
Go ahead, TJ.
Okay. So thinking about like your life prior to your current relationship and coming out, what did that feel like? So like, or you said you don't prefer the term coming out, letting people in, prior to letting people in or living your authentic self. What did it feel like not living authentically?
You always feel like you're hiding. I knew from a very young age that I felt at the time, you know, different. I didn't, you know, feel normal like everyone, quote unquote, else did. But you always feel uncomfortable in certain spaces a lot of times. Then you can kind of look back and say, oh, damn, well, maybe I really wasn't happy. I thought I was. I thought I was living a great life. I had a good job. I was traveling. I was doing things, meeting tons of people, and just living my life. I thought, like most people, you kind of have it all. You're doing your thing, but until you're confronted with yourself, a lot of times you don't realize that you're masking a lot of stuff. And I think all those things that I was doing and that I had was masking the fact that I wasn't truly happy. I dated women, been in relationships with women. I actually dated one other guy many, 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 many moons ago, right out of college. That was my first experience. It wasn't a positive one. I think that's probably why I didn't dabble in that anymore, in that space. But I did not want to have that feeling anymore, a feeling of, I think we all hold a lot of, if you're quote unquote closeted, shame, guilt, feeling as though lack of worth because one, you're not living a true life because you're not being your authentic self, but then also that fear of what other people are going to think, despite the fact that a lot of times, we think we're living fearlessly. I thought I was living fearlessly, like just doing a lot of things and going to different places and trying new experiences for the first time. But there was that one thing that I just wasn't doing, and that was just living who I was meant to be and just allowing myself to have that experience of being really in love with someone. And it wasn't even about trying. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I wasn't looking for a partner. Didn't even intend on getting married. None of that stuff. But when I met Ronald, it was a whirlwind. We met, and literally 1 year later, we were married. After being in this experience, I can easily look back and see like all the pitfalls and all the things that I was doing was in a way really just to kind of mask me not being fully happy. I'm not going to say I wasn't happy because I was doing a lot of things and it did fulfill me. I was happy with the things I was doing, but there was still that piece that was missing. Now I feel complete and whole, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say that you feel like more whole or more fully yourself, like what does that mean for you? Like what do you do differently now than you did before?
I'm not just living for myself. I think a lot of times, as a single person, you're living for yourself. Granted, I have my family, my my mother, my father, my brothers, my cousins, stuff like that. But that's different. Like they all have their own lives, their own families. I didn't have my own family, whereas Ronald is my family. We have created a life together. We're here for one another. We support one another. And it's nice to have a partner in which you can navigate life through. It's so much different and so much more. Life is so much more meaningful when you have someone you can share it with. And listen, having a meaningful life that someone that you can share with doesn't necessarily have to mean that you have to be married to that person or in a solid, committed relationship with them, because there are other ways to create long-lasting relationships and friendships with others. But for me, having someone that I can have a partnership with means so much to me. Like things that we do things together. We do things apart. We talk about our day every day. We sit down and have dinner together every day. Well, we still date, which is really important when you're married. I think a lot of people feel as though when you get married, there are certain things that come with it and certain things you have to do. No, you have to continue to do the things that you were doing when you were dating, because that's how you fell in love with that person. And that's how you guys grow. You need to continue to do those things because this relationship is a constant evolving thing that you have to nurture on a daily basis.
Do you think being married has changed how you have relationships with other people, like being in this authentic space, this authentic relationship, right? Where you're fully yourself, you feel happy and you're fully expressing. Like, do you feel like this relationship has opened a door to give you access to like your full range of emotions? Do you have different experiences with other relationships outside of your romantic partner?
Absolutely. 100%, 1000% actually. Being in this relationship has allowed me to just be free, to not have any reservations. I can be around other people. Like we'll go to social events and, we walk together. Oh, this is my husband, Ronald. And it's never ever like, I'm never going to shy away from it or feel embarrassed by it or like, like it's, this is who I am. This is who we are. And everyone's it's very accepting of it for face value. If they feel any other way outside of what I see and what I interact with, that's on them. I don't know. But I think that being open in this relationship has allowed me and allowed us to have much more meaningful relationships with other people. Now, I've always been a people person. I can go into a room and talk to anybody, strike up a conversation, and potentially create relationships out of that for future reference. It could be friendships or business, whatever. I don't have a problem going into a room, into a space, and saying who I am and just having those conversations. But being in this relationship and just being open about who I am, I don't have to hide any part of myself. And when you don't have to hide any part of yourself, you can allow yourself to be, just giving you a show. This is who I am. Like I said, being in this relationship has allowed me to, in addition to even making new friends, but just making other couple friends, which is new, and being able, not just having heterosexual couple friends, having gay couple friends, having, just all types of relationships and just meeting different people and seeing other relationships from different perspectives, because I can only approach a relationship from the perspective of what we have together. And then to be able to see how other people live their lives and how they structure their relationships, it's eye-opening experience. So yeah, being in this relationship has allowed me to just see so many different groups of people and have even more meaningful experiences.
Okay, so I have kind of a two-part question. So the first part, because we started the episode with who you the people or the type of people that you kind of speak to.
I'm speaking to my current self because this is the space that I'm in and it's relevant to me. But then also I can speak to someone who's still not allowing other people to come in and know who they are because I've been there. I'm speaking, and that's speaking from past experience. And, it's not easy. Let me tell you something. I will say before I was able to, tell my family, that I would say month before was probably the most nerve-wracking month I had ever had. Personally, I didn't realize what it was doing because everyone around me said that I was acting different. I felt like they felt like something was wrong with me. I was dealing with a lot of internal struggle. Like, I was in my 40s. I was like, 42, 43. And, despite being a grown ass man, living my life, doing my thing, you still want approval from, especially like your parents, not that you need it, but you want it because you never want to feel as though you're being shunned from the people who are supposed to be there to love you unconditionally, if that makes any sense. Until our dying day, like we're our parents' little kids, despite, how old we are, despite the fact that we might have kids and our kids have kids, they still see you as this little child that they birthed. And you want that approval from them regardless. So like for me, and I knew that the first person I had to tell had to be my mother. And me and my mother are like best friends. Mm-hmm. And, I think what played in the back of my mind constantly was like, is it a possibility that there could be rejection there? And how do I deal with that? Like, do I have the strength to deal with that? Not that like I said, it's not as though I needed the approval because I'm not financially stable and I'm not this and I'm not that. Like none of those things are factors because I'm a grown ass man. But the comfort that I found in her response allowed me to push through. And once I made that, I don't even know what the word is. Once I told her and let her like completely in, it was like nothing else mattered. Like if everyone else in the world was against me, it didn't matter because I had the one person I needed beside me. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, that was actually going to be the second part of the question. Like, what was the experience of you letting people in? Like, was it positive, negative, mixed, or were there any people that no longer accepted you? Did you get any like pushback, any vitriol?
I was never mad with my family, and I never blamed them because of the simple fact that we are products of our environment, and we own a lot of times. You only do what you know, what you're taught. They were grown up in a different era and taught different things about queer people. So I was never really mad at them about that. But everyone was just very, and when I say accepting, the question that they always threw back at me once I told them was, are you happy? Once I said I'm happy, they were like, well, nothing else matters. We love you for who you are. And I think that's another thing too. When you have family and friends, when you're good to people, when you treat them well. And then also I think the other thing for me that was a little bit more helpful is the fact that I had decades of showing people who I was as a person versus, oh, this is his sexuality. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. I think that made a big deal, and it was a big part of it. People knew me, and they knew my heart as far as who I was as a person, so that when I said, look, this is the person, and it wasn't so much about even saying, hey, I'm gay. It was, hey, I'm married, and I'm married to a man. It's like, oh, okay. You led with you're married. Like, that's kind of like how because it's like, all right, that's huge. And if anything, family members were upset with me, not for being gay, but because I got married and no one knew about it. Because I eloped, basically. Ron and I went to the Justice of the Peace and we got married. I mean, we had a handful of people there. You had to have a witness or whatever. But that's what we wanted. And it was like a quick turnaround. I proposed, if you really want to call it a proposal. And then we got married literally within 2 weeks. We would have gotten married the following week, but we had to wait a week. But my experience was very positive. It was very uplifting. And it showed me that I really built up a lot of this stuff in my head. But here's the thing, though, too. You're looking at other examples and all these experiences of people having such negative reactions to them letting people in and saying, hey, this is who I am. And why I say, it's not about coming out the closet. It's about letting people in. I'm heterosexual and this is my partner. So why should queer people, gay people, bisexual people, transgender people have to say, hey, this is who I am and this is who I love? No, you just say, this is the person I'm with. Okay. And move on.
Okay.
We're
So
all human beings.
But I want to ask you something before I forget. I had two things that I wanted to ask. The first thing is, I know you just described how you waited or you came out later in life or whatever, or you let people in later in life. Do you feel like you had a lot of internal work to do as far as dismantling like internal homophobia? Because after living a certain way for a long time and being surrounded by people who think a certain way, like eventually those things just kind of seep into our own psyche. And the other part that I was going to ask you was about what you were saying about the heterosexual people and how they don't necessarily have to announce. And I would think that some people may argue that heterosexual people always put their sexuality on display. It's all over everything. Like they're always are promoting these their relationships. It's in the church sermons, it's in TV commercials, it's in the movies we watch. So it's like they're constantly promoting who they're with. And so I wonder how you reconcile the imagery that we're bombarded with constantly with how you conceptualize sharing information or about your romantic choices.
All right. So to answer the first part, I think, yes, I had to deal with a lot of the internal conflicts that I had, things that were learned over the years. As a young child, you're told being gay is wrong. You're going to hell. You can't go to heaven. It's a sin. Batiman this, batiman that. For those that are Jamaican, they'll understand what I'm talking about. I had to pretend that, I wasn't that way, especially when I was younger. And, being a young Black Caribbean boy, in the very beginning, you don't understand what all those things are. You don't understand what those feelings mean. You're very conflicted. We had to be at church every Sunday and you're hearing people in the pulpit talking about homosexuality and how it's a sin, it's an abomination. They're going to hell and they have to burn, burn, burn. And you always walk out like, oh my God, am I going to secretly burn? Is anyone seeing me on fire right now? Like that type of stuff. And that's just ingrained in us for years and years and years. So it does take a long time for you to work through those things. I remember the relationship that I was in right after college, like that was a total secret. Like no one knew about that. And it did a lot on me personally and my psyche. Like, everything is hidden. It's a lie. And you're just quiet and you're in this thing, and then there's this amount of guilt because you're like, oh my God, I know this is wrong, and how do I need to change, and feeling shame and guilt all the time, and then getting to a point where it's just like, fast forward, and I meet Ronald, and it's just like, no, there's nothing wrong with this. This feels right. I know this is the person I'm supposed to be with. Like, I think that, there's someone for everyone in this world. We're not meant to walk this world alone. And once I met him, I knew, like, nope, this is it. This is my person. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing wrong with us. And I'm not going to hide this. And I will say it happened, I think, rather fast. We met in January. By February, I was out publicly in other spaces with him, not pretending, going to events, and, literally within a month of us just dating. And I met his parents, I think, within the first month and a half. And I would have never let anyone know that, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gay. Like, now I'm being introduced. This is, my boyfriend, my significant other, within a month and a half. I'm just like, but I had to be okay with it. And, I took all those steps, but then I still had a lot of work to do because it was another 8 months. I think about 9 months in, it was right after my birthday. No, so it was about 10 months in, a little after my birthday is when I told my mom. So there was that whole journey. It was accelerated, but it happened within the first year. So, before I got married, my mom knew. I told her in November. I got married in January. So there was a lot of transition, a lot of moving parts happening within the span of 1 year for me. But I felt as though it was necessary. And I think that's how I tend to work a lot of times with myself in life in general. Like, I see a vision, I see something, and I just need to make it happen. I'm not trying to pussyfoot around it or try to figure out how can I. No, it's just, all right, where's the clearest path to get of least resistance to get to where I need to get to? And I did those things that I needed to do, told people and talked to people that I needed to talk to, and moved on from there. Now, what was the second part of the question? I don't want to forget it.
You don't want to what?
No, what was the second part of the question you had asked?
Oh, the second part of the question that I asked was about, you were saying how you don't think that it's fair that gay men have to, or gay people have to display or tell who their partner is in ways that heterosexual people don't.
Yeah. So, I would agree with you in a way. We are constantly bombarded with heterosexuality on TV. And, it's not seen like, it goes with what's going on now in politics and in culture, as far as like, drag queens are the sin of the world, and gay people in books and in TV are a sin, and this and that. But yet still, allow your 5-year-old to watch a heterosexual scene on full display when these kids should not be watching that. They shouldn't be watching sex scenes with anyone at that age. You know what I mean? But yet still, you want to vilify a small demographic of people. I think it's important for LGBTQ plus IA people to see themselves represented on TV, in books, on podcasts, on YouTube, on Instagram, because it's society, it's the world, it's humanity. And the more that we see of ourselves, I think that the less hate would be in the world. It's unfortunate, like I said, that we're living through a political climate that is taking 5 steps back. But we have to be vigilant in who we are and how we represent ourselves. I think that a lot of times, especially when it comes to Black gay men, we are stereotyped in such a way that it's hurtful. Because, here's part of my experience when I let people in. I remember this was asked of me. It's like, well, who's the woman, who's the man in a relationship? I'm like, no, that's not how this works. There's no man, there's no woman in a relationship. 2 men in this relationship, and we identify as men. We're not trying to be women. And, we've always been portrayed as these overly flamboyant men, and that's all that was represented on TV, in radio. And yes, there are flamboyant gay men, and there's nothing wrong with that. But not everyone is like that. So to be able to have representation such as this panel here, the 3 of us, you get to see 3 distinct people who just so happen to be gay, that come from different walks of life that represents the community in a different way. That is empowering, that is helpful. And I will say that was my most watched episode that I've done in the last 7 months. It was the most commented video conversation that I've done in the last 7 months. It resonated the most with people. And it wasn't just people in the LGBTQ plus IA community. It was everyone. I got a lot of it. This was so necessary. It was needed. People reached out saying, I'm that person. Like, I'm still in the closet, but you give me hope. And I didn't have anyone to do something like this, or just to have a conversation where people can say, I see myself in you and you give me hope. To have someone say, you give me hope, it's like, wow, I didn't realize that, us doing this would do that for somebody else. And, you don't do these things, well, at least I don't do these things for that type of attention. All I'm trying to do is to say, hey, this is who I am. Here are other people like me. We're not any different than anybody else. We're just living our lives. We're all here on this earth for a short period of time. And if we can share our experiences with someone else, more power to everybody, And that's what I want to do more of moving forward. Because I realize that, one, I do have a platform. I do have a voice. I have experiences. And I think my experiences is the same experiences of other people. But a lot of times we don't know that we have shared common experiences because no one's talking about it. We're all just siloed in our corners, living our lives, just trying not to be hurt, So representation matters. Having us on this platform, us talking about these topics is very necessary. It's very important. And, I'm going to show up every week to continue to do this as long as you guys want to keep doing this.
Yeah. All I can say is I appreciate everything that you shared, how honest you've been, how open you've been with things that I'm sure are very private to you, because I know personally that you're a very private person. So all I can say is I appreciate your openness and your honesty for sharing this with me and TJ.
Ditto. I would add to that, I am, I guess, proud of how far you've come, because I remember, when we were first having conversations, however many years ago this was, and how private you did want to be. And it was always kind of in the back of my head, but what version of Chris are people going to be getting then? And I was like, I'm going to respect where he is, but I think for me and for us, that's going to cause us to navigate a certain way, because then there are topics that we couldn't step on or we couldn't talk about. And so I'm proud to see your journey, your evolution, if you will, to get to this place.
Yeah. I think it was necessary. I knew, because I remember the conversation we had, and these were like conversations from about 2 years ago when we started talking about doing this. I constantly asked myself, how much am I willing to share? And it wasn't about being afraid to share it, because I was sharing my life with my family and friends. But, it was really about, I didn't want other people to have the right to comment on certain things. But I feel as though it's necessary for people to understand that it is okay to be yourself. And how do you do that? By having representation. And, I've put myself out there on this platform for years now. And, hey, if I'm doing this on a regular basis, there's no way I can do this and not just be completely, authentically, 100% myself.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because otherwise it's boring.
It's fake.
And it's fake, and people can see right through it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I have no more questions. I think that was a really good conversation.
Yeah, so do I.
I'm curious to know if we get any additional questions in the comments of this video, though.
Yeah.
So about anything or any additional questions that they may want to ask, feel free to leave your questions in the comments, and I'm positive that he will be happy to respond to you.
So, that was a really great way to start this series. And I hope that people walk away with learning something, not necessarily about me or about us, but about yourselves as well. Just live your life authentically for yourself. Don't live for others. Don't let others dictate how you move in this world. Because ultimately, it's just you. You know, when you leave this earth, you're leaving by yourself. You're not leaving with anyone. But before we sign off, we just want to let you guys know where you can find us on our social media. You can find me at Constantly Changing for me, or constantly underscore changing for me on all my social medias. That would be Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. TJ, where can we find you?
Bizarre Hodgepodge here on YouTube. That's BZARHODG. Also on Instagram and Twitter. I'm also thinking about getting a Mastodon account because Twitter is trash these days.
What the fuck is Mastodon?
It's like Twitter, but it's different. It's decentralized Twitter. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, all those places. Bizarre Hodgepodge.
All right, Rex, where can we find you at?
You can find me at Rags and Pieces Mac on Instagram and Rex D Writer on TikTok. And I think that I'm gonna change that to be my YouTube name too.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then of course, you can find us here at the official conference call here on YouTube. And this is part 1 of a 3-part series. So check us out next week for the second episode, where we'll end with TJ, Bizarre Hodgepodge, and we'll talk about his story and his journey. Yeah, we'll do that next week. So
it's gonna
stay
be a
tuned.
bumpy ride.
Until then, we'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.